Hello and welcome to the Wednesday, 1st of October edition of A Proud Malcontent. I'm Pete Bell and I am a proud malcontent. I thought I'd treat you to an opening shot today of what I rather pretentiously call my studio. It's a rather Heath Robinson setup, but it seems to do the job. What have we got? I'm here. This is me over here. At the other side of the mic, sound baffles so as to improve the sound quality and cut out some of the background noise because we're on a city street here, a very busy street, South Street in Perth. More sound baffling to shield the window to stop echo from the glass. Couple of monitors so that I have a vague idea of what's going on, and the trusty Logitech StreamCam, which brings you the pictures as soon as I turn to the correct camera. And that's it. Here we are. Were you missing me? I was here all the time. So that's it. That was your wee treat for today. Although you've another wee treat coming later on because we've another another satirical interlude from Frankie Mary. I was trying to think of a name for this slot. I was going to call it the Frankie Mary's satirical song spot, but I maybe need to think a bit longer on that. Maybe you've got some ideas what you could call it. Keep it polite. She's a nice lady. That'll be closing the show, and it'll be a treat for me too because I haven't actually heard it because I got the email from from Frankie Mary with the song, and they marked it for attention and then promptly forgot all about it. So I haven't even listened to the song yet. But that's for later. That's for later, excuse me. What am I supposed to be talking about today? Well, we have, it says here on the blurb, the promo for the programme, that prompted by something seen on the letters page of the National's website today, I'm supposed to be talking to you about psychology, the colonised mind, and the various fantasies and delusions which have taken hold of the independence movement. Right, that sounds interesting. So what about this this letter that I was talking about in the community page on the National, the letters page, sometimes has the most interesting stuff in the paper. There's sometimes some very good stuff in there, and not necessarily stuff that you agree with, but because sometimes it's good to get stuff that you disagree with. It gets your mind thinking. When you have to attack an argument, a point of view, you have to query it, critique it. It gets you thinking about your own point of view as well. So the particular letter in question is titled "Backing of Amendment at SNP Conference Could Set the Heather on Fire." Well, I think you can probably guess the tone of the letter from that headline. It's very much in favour of the amendment to the leadership resolution, which is it wouldn't be hard to come up with an amendment that improves on the leadership resolution. That's a resolution submitted under the names of John Swinney and Keith Brown. It wouldn't be hard to come up with something better than that because it is shite. It is absolute shite. It is simply a strategy, and that's it going in air quotes, a strategy to ask pretty please for another Section 30 order so that we can have another sham referendum that will not lead to independence being restored. So you'd think any amendment is an improvement on that. Unfortunately, not. The amendment fiddles a bit with the. It's wrong to say that it's not an improvement. As I say, anything would be an improvement. But to think the amendment totally changes the whole landscape there with the SNP's approach to the constitutional issue, it would be a very, very bad mistake. And the reason for that is that the amendment derives from the same mindset as the original resolution. They're both coming from the same place. It's a place that puts Westminster at the centre of the issue. Only the people of Scotland belong at the centre of the issue, but the SNP, Alapa, all of them, all put Westminster at the centre of the issue. They all end up, whatever they say about their approach and, oh, we'll do this and we'll do that, you skip to the end and you'll find negotiations with Westminster or negotiations for independence with Westminster. It's always putting Westminster at the centre of the issue. And well, that's just not good enough, is it? Westminster doesn't belong there. And it's a psychological thing, as we'll get to in a moment. I've highlighted one passage from the letter. It's from Alan Crockett. If you read the letters page regularly, you'll be familiar with the name. And Alan says in this particular passage, talking about the resolution with the amendment, if the amendment is passed, it's very doubtful if it will be. I think the payroll vote and the loyalists who basically just think it a sin to vote against a leadership resolution, I think they will ensure that the amendment is dropped. But the party leadership will have had this whole charade of a debate about it, and it really is a charade. As you'll know from previous shows, previous broadcasts, the only resolution that would have made a difference, that would have really changed the SNP's approach, is the Newington resolution, which never even gets a mention. It didn't get a mention even when it was extant, but it was dropped from the agenda and or excluded from the agenda. And the drafters of the Newington resolution, to the best of my knowledge, they were not offered the opportunity to submit an amendment instead. Although I don't see how that would have been possible, because the Newington resolution totally changed the whole approach to the constitutional issue, and it simply wasn't compatible with the wishy-washy horror that is the Swinney resolution. But the Newington resolution could have saved the SNP. It could have made it the party of independence again. The existing amendment won't do that. So back to that passage from Alan Crockett's letter. And if a majority of list votes was won, that would constitute a new political fact, namely a real vote in a real election by a real majority of real Scottish voters for real independence. No. That's just not true. a new political fact. It would be votes on the on one part of a Holyrood election. That's the only political fact it would be. It would be a real vote, yes, but a real vote in a real election, not a vote in a referendum. And yeah, okay, fine if they get a majority of real Scottish voters. I don't know what a fake Scottish voter would look like. But it's not a vote for real independence. The party isn't, the SNP isn't proposing real independence. They're not standing as an independence party. They're standing as a Section 30 referendum party, which is an entirely different thing. So it's not all that Mr. Crockett says it is. It just isn't. It cannot be conclusive. It cannot be decisive, because it's an election and not a referendum. Okay, using a list helps to make it give it a little binary element. But the votes are all for different parties. They all have different stances on the constitutional issue. They all have different things to say about it. And they all, or most of them anyway, there's some of them I don't know what the hell they're proposing, but they all end up proposing negotiations with Westminster. And as we'll discuss in a moment, that's not the way we'll do. So there are just so many arguments that the opposition could come up with, saying that this is not conclusive. It's not a clear-cut decision. It's not a clear-cut choice. And if it's questionable, it can't be conclusive. These two things are mutually exclusive. If it's questionable, it cannot be conclusive, and it needs to be conclusive. Think about after independence is restored. There are still going to be people in this country who are opposed to it. And if we leave them with any argument at all that the process has somehow excluded them or been unfair to them or simply not been impeccably democratic, then that is a recipe for trouble. It's a recipe for ongoing conflict. The only thing that will ensure that we avoid this conflict is if we make it a conclusive vote, a conclusive exercise of our right of self-determination in a proper constitutional referendum. And nobody's proposing that, nobody bar myself. But let's go back to Mr. Crockett's, Alan Crockett's letter and the rest of this passage. By then refusing to discuss independence, oh dear, discuss independence, London would place itself in an absurd position. Well, when did the British government ever shy away from putting itself in an absurd position? It puts itself in absurd positions day in and day out. It's in an absurd position with Palestine. It's in the whole Brexit thing was absurd. The arguments about immigration are absurd, because it was Brexit that brought this about, these small boats. It was Brexit that caused that. So the London government has no qualms at all about appearing absurd. It appears absurd pretty much all the time. So that's not going to make a difference. That's not going to change its mind about independence, about Scotland leaving the Union. Simply looking absurd won't do that. It looks absurd already with its attempts to, so far successful attempts, to block the exercise of our right of self-determination. So looking absurd isn't going to change anything. And if somehow the niceties of the legal framework prevent a Scottish exit on the Holyrood initiative, the pump would be primed for turning the next Westminster general election into a plebiscite with teeth, which could not be set aside. Well, that is pretty much the same argument as we just had, because so long as you're going to Westminster, so long as you're asking them, so long as you're discussing, negotiating, so long as you're talking to them, so long as you're paying them any heed at all, so long as you are allowing them a role in the exercise of our right of self-determination, then we will not get a proper exercise of our right of self-determination, and anything can be set aside because you're leaving the last word to Westminster. And if you leave the last word to Westminster, that word is always going to be no. So a plebiscite with teeth, no, it's an election. It's a Westminster election. And as is already discussed, no plebiscite election can possibly be conclusive. It cannot possibly be as conclusive as it needs to be, as a constitutional referendum needs to be. It needs to be clear cut, no arguments. Final word, that is it. So a plebiscite election isn't going to do that. A de facto election isn't going to do that. We turn now to the reason I haven't responded directly to Alan Crockett's letter is that somebody has done it much better than I could, or at least as well. I shouldn't sell myself short here. It's my old friend that I've never met, James Murphy, who, again, readers of the National's letter page will be familiar with James Murphy's responses and posts and comments. They're very astute and very well expressed. So I didn't attempt to better that, but I had to discuss it today because what James says is just absolutely spot on. So I'm going to read you the whole of his first response to Alan Crockett, and then we'll see where we go from there, because there are two responses and they really go together. The first response, and if you'll excuse me, I'll take a small sip of water first. Oh, dead air. That's not supposed to be allowed. Right, James Murphy's response to Alan Crockett. Both Swinney's motion and the Rebels' amendment reveal the same underlying problem. It isn't strategy, it's psychology. It's a mindset formed by centuries of living within another state's frame. You can see it in every word they use. Ask, negotiate, seek permission, gain recognition. These are not the words of a sovereign people. They are the language of subordination, internalized so deeply that even those who talk of independence still think like dependents. That's how colonial rule works. It doesn't need soldiers when it has your imagination. It teaches you to see authority as something external, to wait for the nod from London before you move. The British state doesn't need to forbid independence. It just needs Scots who believe they must ask first. You hear it every time Swinney speaks about mandates and process, as if sovereignty must be ratified by Westminster. You hear it too in the rebels' plan to use votes to begin negotiations on dissolving the union, as though the power to act still lies somewhere else. Both approaches share the same flaw. They still define Scotland's future through someone else's consent. That is the psychology of a colony. Cautious, deferential, always second-guessing, afraid of confrontation. It's a culture that prizes procedure over power, respectability over resolve. It's what Frantz Fanon called the colonial mentality, where the colonized elite identifies more with the system that imprisons them than with the people they're supposed to liberate. Wolfe Tone's vision and Collins's pragmatism both flowed from the same truth. A free people act free first. Recognition follows action. They understood that no empire gives up power out of goodwill. It yields only when the cost of denial outweighs the cost of consent. Oh man, that is so well said. That is, I'm left wordless. I'm left speechless. It is so. I could pick bits out of that are just little gems, there. So, what does Mr. Crockett have to say in response? Well, let's take a look. Replying to James Murphy, he says, "I'm sorry, but you appear to me to be obsessing about what you regard as the psychology of the matter, which you seem to regard as crucial, but to no purpose that I can discern. If Scotland cannot resume its independence without first inhabiting the absolute psychological frame which you deem proper, you set an impossible bar. It's not enough to actually leave the Union. You have to do it with the right frame of mind. Good luck, but I've gone far enough and will leave the last word to yourself if you wish." Well, what he means there is that he just doesn't have much more of an argument. He has nothing else to say, and he hasn't said very much. Well, what does he say here? The absolute psychological frame which you deem proper, you set an impossible bar. You set an impossible bar. Where is that bar? The bar that James is setting is free people acting free. Is the sovereign people acting as sovereign people. If that bar is too much, if that bar is too high, if that bar is impossible, then so is independence. And the tone of this about it seems to be a scoffing tone when he talks about it's not enough to actually leave the Union. You have to do it with the right frame of mind. Well, of course you have to do it with the right frame of mind. I wrote an article about this. I should have. I'll find a link and post it. It has to tell the right story for future generations. The story of how we restore our independence has to be the right story. The last thing we want is a story of how England gave us our independence. They gifted us to it. Because that's the way in the past, England as Britain has represented former colonies restoring their independence. This is gracious Britannia gifting them independence. That's their perspective. We don't want that. We want our independence to have been taken by the people of Scotland. We want it to be our choice. And we don't give a damn what Westminster thinks about it. We act, and then we dare them to try and act against us, to try and stop us doing what we have every right to do. And that is not declare independence, but hold a proper constitutional referendum. So, Alan Crockett's attitude here is very questionable. He doesn't seem to care about the frame of mind with which we approach restoring independence, and he seems to think it's impossible for the sovereign people of Scotland to act sovereign. Honestly, I don't know why he's part of the independence movement if he's thinking like that. So obviously, I've responded in my own rather clumsy way. James Murphy responds rather more elegantly. Alan, you're still seeing independence as something that depends on agreement. It doesn't. You don't negotiate your way into freedom. You build the state first and act sovereign. If Westminster wants to discuss assets later, that's fine. If not, you carry on. That's how every modern case worked. The Baltic states didn't wait for Moscow's consent. They rebuilt their parliaments, tax systems, and laws, while the USSR still claimed control over them. Kosovo declared independence while Serbia said no and refused to recognize the division. The ICJ, the International Court of Justice, later confirmed that Kosovo's declaration did not break any international law. Recognition followed because they acted like a state first. And you will recall, I think, perhaps from a previous broadcast, that Kosovo is now recognized by over 100 nations. There will be people out there who will tell you that Kosovo is struggling along without recognition. Kosovo has been formally recognized by over 100 UN members and has informal relations with many more countries. So it is proceeding as a normal, independent country. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. The problem here isn't law, it's psychology. Centuries inside another state's frame have trained Scots to see authority as something that comes from London. That's why even now, leaders speak of negotiating and seeking agreement as if independence needs permission. It's the colonial mindset Fanon warned about, deferential, cautious, waiting for the nod. Absolute sovereignty begins in the mind. A free people act first. You build the state, take control, and only then, if the other side wants to talk about assets, you decide whether to meet them. You don't delay liberation for balance sheets. That is my point. I can't get any clearer than that. It's perfectly clear, James, and perfectly correct. This mindset is actually, like I've termed it, the colonial mindset. And it's something I've been talking about for some years now. I've been discussing this psychology, this colonial mindset, and we are all affected by it. Even I'm affected by it. We cannot be other than affected by it because it's generational. This has been more than 3 centuries. We have been immersed in what James calls as other states frame, where everything is defined with reference to England as Britain. You can't be immersed in that and not be affected by it. The BBC, it is the British Broadcasting Corporation, it is the England as Britain Broadcasting Corporation. It, more than anything, there are newspapers as well, but the BBC, arguably more than anything, has created this other state's frame within which we exist, that we are immersed in, and we can't help but soak it up. It's in there. There are various stages, various degrees of decolonization of the mind. It starts as soon as you begin to question the Union. It starts when you reject the notion that Westminster has a role in the exercise of our right of self-determination. It starts when you cease to put Westminster at the centre of everything, including the constitutional issue. Westminster has no legitimate role in the exercise of our right of self-determination. Furthermore, the UN, international law, says that the British state has no right to interfere. It is actually prohibited from interfering in the exercise of our right of self-determination. So why the hell are our supposed political leaders and the supposed leaders of the independence movement, why are they giving Westminster a role, and a decisive role, to which they are not entitled? They simply aren't entitled to it. The self and self-determination refers to us. It refers to the people of Scotland. The franchise in any referendum will be defined by our parliament. But the self and self-determination refers to us. No external power may interfere. And yet here we have the SNP and even Alan Crockett's amendment all going cap in hand to Westminster. At the end of the day, they all defer to Westminster. So that's completely wrong. They are giving Westminster a role that they're not entitled to, and a role that the British state will always use to prevent Scotland leaving the Union. They will use that role in any way that they can to prevent us leaving. At the moment, they're using that role to deny us the exercise of our right of self-determination. And I'm not meaning a Section 30 referendum, because that is not the full and proper exercise of our right of self-determination. It's participating in a glorified opinion poll that leaves the last word to Westminster. And what did I just say? Give Westminster the last word, and it will always be no. And what do you do after they've said no? By deferring to them, by giving them the opportunity to say no, by asking them in the first place, you have granted them the power to say no. You've granted them that authority, because asking presumes the right of refusal. Why are you asking if it can't be refused? This is a phrase that we hear time after time. Oh, we do this and we do this, and then they can't refuse. Why are you even wondering if they'll refuse? Why wonder about that in the first place? Don't ask them. They can't refuse if you don't ask them. Just do it. Act sovereign. Sovereignty is not just what we are. Sovereign, I should say, is not just what we are. It's how we act. It's what we do. So we have to act like sovereign people. And as James says, sovereign people do not go to the colonizer and ask permission to indulge in an exercise whereby they vote on their own constitutional future. Sovereign people don't do that. If you're sovereign, you are the ultimate authority. You are where it all ends. You are whence derives all legitimate political authority. If you have answered the question, then that is the final word on the matter. If you are asked, should Scotland leave the Union? Should the Union be ended? And you say yes. If the people of Scotland say yes to that, then that's it. Scotland's independence is restored at that very moment. The moment the result is announced, our independence is restored. Nobody, not anybody in the world, has the authority to prevent it. It finishes with our say so. We have the last word. But here we have John Swinney and all his predecessors determined to give Westminster the last word, because that's what happens with a Section 30 referendum. It is consultative and non-self-executing. That means it has no legal or constitutional effect. But the SNP and others tell us, assure us, that independence will flow from a yes vote in this referendum, this consultative, non-self-executing referendum. Well, those words alone tell you that independence will not flow directly from it. That's what non-self-executing means. It means it doesn't actually do anything. Nothing ensues from it. And it's consultative, which means that it goes back to the originator to be assessed and disposed. That's what consultative means. And the originator is Westminster, because Westminster has simply allowed the Scottish Parliament the power to conduct this referendum on their behalf. When Holyrood legislates for a Section 30 referendum, they are legislating on behalf of Westminster. It's Westminster's referendum. It's not our referendum. It's Westminster's, and it's not even a proper referendum. It's a consultative exercise. It's an opinion poll. And Westminster can quite easily just say no. And it doesn't matter how big the majority is for yes, Westminster can say no. They might not say straight out no. They might say, well, that's an interesting result. Well, it's 66% in favour of independence. 66% yes, they wouldn't use the word independence. They would say 66% yes. Well, that has certainly given us something to think about. We will have to reflect on this and come to some conclusion about it. And then it drags on and it drags on. And finally, they decide to appoint a royal commission or whatever, and it's supposed to report in 2 or 3 years. And after 5 years, they're then talking about 7 years. And when it does report, it's totally inconclusive. And by that time, Scotland's been sucked dry. Scotland's just a husk. So we can't afford to do that. But we have to do something now. And it has to be something decisive, something conclusive. And it has to be something we do, not something we ask permission to do, not something we ask others to do for us. It has to be something that we do. And that something cannot be a declaration of independence, because to be a declaration of independence, it must come from all the people, and it must be verifiable. Therefore, it must be the product of a referendum, a proper constitutional referendum to international standards, supervised by the UN in all probability. Then the result would be conclusive. Terrifying if the result was no, but no, the result wouldn't be no. I'm quite positive of that. And even if it was, it wouldn't end the matter. There are plenty precedents of repeated referendums, plenty precedents for that. Anytime circumstances change, you've got reason for another referendum, campaign for another referendum. So we have to do something decisive, and it cannot be independence. Making the 2026 Holyrood election is the next national democratic event. We absolutely must make that the trigger for a process leading to the restoration of independence, or rather leading to a decision on the restoration of independence. That is to say, a proper constitutional referendum. It has to be the next year. It has to be next May, 2026, the Holyrood election. We have to use that, and it's not happening. Nobody's even talking about using it as the trigger for a process that will restore independence, because nobody is even talking about a process that will restore independence. They're talking about a Section 30 referendum application, or they're talking about negotiations with Westminster. They're not talking about independence. As soon as they bring Westminster into it, it's over. Just forget it. It then ceases to be about independence. No, what we do with the with the 2026 election is we make it a de facto referendum on the legislative competence of the Scottish Parliament. At the moment, we cannot have a proper constitutional referendum because the power to have a proper constitutional referendum, the legislative competence, is withheld, illegitimately withheld from the Scottish Parliament. And this is where mindset comes into it. There are various ways in which mindset comes into it, but there's a way of thinking about the Scottish Parliament. And if we think of it as our national parliament, our original ancient parliament, if we think of it as that, and we think of it as having been taken from us in 1707, and then in 1999, it was given back to us, it was restored to us, but in chains, the chains of devolution, chains which withheld powers, because that's what devolution is about. It's not about giving power, it's about the power that's withheld. It's responsibility without authority. So the devolution simply isn't enough, and it can't lead to independence. But if you think about a parliament in that way, that's a right mindset, because that institution is already there, and it is the Parliament of Scotland. It's the people who were elected to represent all the various communities of Scotland. Now, you might say, you might object to some of those communities' choices, but they're their choices. That's the Parliament. There might be a better way of electing them. There certainly shouldn't be any British parties in there. That's the problem. The problem is not with the Parliament or the electoral system. The problem is that there are British parties sitting in there. And the fact that it accepts Westminster's authority. If the Parliament rejects that authority, then effectively we're independent. But we do it in a way that will satisfy the international community that we have done it democratically, unimpeachably democratically. And so we use the 2026 election as a de facto referendum to on the restoration to the Scottish Parliament of its legislative competence in constitutional matters. And we do that. We make it decisive and give the binary element to the election, which allows it to be a de facto referendum, by having all the nominally pro-independence parties transform themselves into genuine pro-independence parties by adopting exactly the same manifesto commitment on the constitutional issue. That is to say, a commitment to assert the legislative competence of the Scottish Parliament in constitutional matters. The moment that is done, that is the rejection of Westminster authority. That is effectively independence. It only then needs to be formalised. But we're doing this on the grounds of human rights. It's the whole basis of this exercise is founded on our human right of self-determination. And that way, we are fighting from the high ground, and we put the British state on the low ground, and they simply will not have a case. They cannot deny our right of self-determination. They've been very, very careful up to now not to be seen to deny our right of self-determination. In fact, they have legitimized our right of self-determination. They've acknowledged it in the Edinburgh Agreement and in numerous statements. They've acknowledged that we have the right of self-determination, but they claim to themselves the authority to say not now. So effectively, it's a right that we don't have the power to exercise. And a right that you don't have the power to exercise isn't a right at all, because a right must include the power to exercise it, or it's not a right. If it can be withheld from you, then it's not a right. So that is the way to go. That's the way to go, and that is us acting sovereign by voting in a de facto referendum. And remember, this is on an internal parliamentary issue. It is not a vote on independence. So the same standard doesn't apply. It doesn't have to be quite as conclusive. It'd be nice to have it as conclusive as possible, but it doesn't have to be quite as conclusive. It's sort of at a lower level, if you like to think of it that way. There's also the fact that it's very doubtful whether there's even 50% in favour of independence at the moment. Yet we have all these people wanting to make next year's election a pretendy referendum on independence. When the support isn't there, not only is the support not there, there is no sign of that support being increased, because all that's being proposed going forward is more of the same from the last 10 years. And this is what the SNP is saying. And we have to treat that seriously, because it's all but certain that the SNP will be the largest party and the party of government after the 2026 election. It doesn't matter whether we like it or not. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't. That is what's going to happen, or it's the only thing that we're safe to assume will happen. We have to proceed on that assumption. So if the campaign is proceeding just as it was in the last 10 years, which is basically this vision thing, telling everybody how wonderful it will be, selling it like a holiday destination, but not explaining to anybody how they get to that destination, then the campaign will make no more progress than it has in the last 10 years, which is none. Has made no progress in the last 10 years. So simply carrying on with the same, we cannot reasonably expect that that will increase support for independence. However, there are various surveys like the Scottish Attitudes Survey that tell us the Parliament has widespread support. It is very much been taken to the hearts of the people of Scotland. Well, if not their hearts, maybe their heads a bit. But it has become the locus of politics in Scotland. It is the Scottish Parliament. It has been hijacked by the British state to use for its own purposes. But what do you do with something that's been hijacked? Something that's been stolen from you? What do? You take it back. You don't abandon it, you take it back. And that is what we have to do. We have to, first of all, take back our government, which we do by taking back the political parties. We take back the political parties by a mass movement exercise which demonstrates our power and basically scares the skitters out of the politicians. And we insist that they do something that we want them to do. We tell them we are not going to be satisfied with what you are prepared to offer us. We are going to tell you what we want, and you will damn well do it. Otherwise, you're out. We don't vote for you. Simple as that. That'll scare them. And what we tell them is to incorporate the Manifesto for Independence into their election manifestos. Then we can make the regional list vote part of the Holyrood election next year. We can make that a de facto referendum on the question of the powers of the Scottish Parliament. And people will always vote for more powers for the Parliament, always. So this will get support. It's an easier win, it's a bigger win, and it's a win that leads on to better things. Because once you've asserted the legislative competence in the area of constitutional matters, you have effectively declared independence. If you control the Constitution, you control everything. You can do anything. You can change anything. That is the case with the British state. Because they control the Constitution, they control Scotland. They're able to deny our Constitution, our claim of right, the sovereignty of our people. They're able to do that because they control the Constitution. And we won't change that unless and until we take back our control of the Constitution, which we do through our Parliament and which we can do next year. But it's not going to happen because the independence movement has shown no interest. They're all far too tied up with various fantasies and delusions and projects. They think, an analogy I gave today, they think they're already on the bus. The bus is rolling towards independence, and they're on that bus, singing and chanting. Scotland's cause isn't on that bus. Scotland's cause is standing at Inverness bus station, freezing its arse off. The bus that will take its independence is sitting there. There's nobody on it. And there's nobody to take Scotland's cause onto it. It's sitting there ready to go, but nobody's getting on board. Where these people are, these other people, the people who think they're on a bus going to independence, they're not. They're in a bus that's going to crash into the wall of the British state. That's where they are. they will be stopped. They will be stopped short. And that is what I fear is going to happen. And the 2026 election, instead of being the trigger for the process which leads to the restoration of independence within a couple of years, it will end up being a total damp squib, not even a damp squib. Nothing will happen. Nothing will change. The SNP won't get a majority of seats. Therefore, John Swinney will have a perfect excuse for not asking for a Section 30 order. I'll breathe a sigh of relief because that's a good thing. But otherwise, it's just another 5 years of waiting while absolutely nothing happens. That's what the 2026 election holds in store for us if we, the people, the independence movement, if we don't get our act together. We have to give a massive show of strength. The way to do that, a simple way to do it, is to all sign a petition. 100,000 signatures on a petition demanding adoption of the Manifesto for Independence, and you'll at least get the attention of the political parties. You'll get their attention in the run-up to an election. You'll not get their attention at any other time, because once the election's over, that's it. Their bums are on that seat and nothing's shifting them. We have to seize this opportunity. I'm talking about 100,000 signatures. Maybe 50,000 would do. 10,000 would be a start. Less than 1,000 people have signed that petition. I don't understand it. I honestly don't understand it. All I'm doing is asking them to act sovereign. That's all I'm doing. Right. It's time to finish now. I haven't told you what's going to be on Sunday, but you'll find out soon enough because I'll be posting a promo for it. But I don't even know how long Frankie Mary's song is at the end of the show. So I'm going to leave plenty of time for it. And I'm totally hoarse, so I'm going to leave you with the lovely Frankie Mary.
He's the friend of the very stable genius. He's the friend of the very stable genius. He's the friend of the very stable genius. And his name rhymes with where you keep your car. They say that he'll abolish Scotland when it comes to power. They say that he'll abolish Scotland when it comes to power. They say that he'll abolish Scotland when it comes to power. And his name rhymes with where you keep your car. He's the friend of the very stable genius. He's the friend of the very stable genius. He's the friend of the very stable genius. And his name rhymes with where you keep your car. So we'd better all be ready when he comes to take us down. We'd better all be ready when he comes to take us down. We'd better all be ready when he comes to take us down. And his name rhymes with where you keep your car. He's a friend of the very stable genius. He's a friend of the very stable genius. He's a friend of the very stable genius. And his name rhymes with where you keep your car. He's a friend of the very stable genius. He's a friend of the very stable genius. He's a friend of the very stable genius. And his name rhymes with where you keep your car. His name rhymes with where you keep your car. Do-do-do-do-do-do. What does that even mean? His name rhymes with where you keep your car? I don't know. I keep my car in the drive. Maybe his name's Clive. Oh, I never thought of that. Oh, but no, it can't be because I keep my car in the street. So maybe he's called Pete. Or maybe he's called Pete Clive, because that would cover the base of them, wouldn't it? Pete Clive. Aye, but what about carport? I mean, a lot of folk have got carports nowadays. Pete Clive doesn't rhyme with carport. All right enough. Ach no, but nothing rhymes with carport. You sure? You sure nothing rhymes with carport? No, nothing rhymes with carport. It'll be Pete Clive, I'm telling you, it'll be Pete Clive. Oh, that'll be right then. Pete Clive. Aye, Pete Clive.